Hunter, what do we have, 2 hours? No. All good. Get your coffee. We'll get double espresso for everyone.
Well, I did say I was going to make you guys.
Hey, this is technically the 9th or 11th inning. This is it. This is
for the grand finale.
This is the end of 22 months of COVID. Digital, 190 summits, 7 in-person summits. This is the last 30 minutes. So you better nail it, Rocco, or you're never coming back again.
Third time's a charm. No. Well, first and foremost, thanks for everyone, and obviously the partners for hanging in with us for the full day, and at the same time, keeping it interactive. As Hunter said, the 11th hour. Let's keep it interactive. I mean, it's a topic that's been touched in different ways, and the evolving role of the CISO, transforming the different cyber strategies. As many of you know, and from earlier, my name is Rocco Grillo. I'm Managing Director, Alvarez and Marsal. Today's moderator, we've got an all-star lineup. But before we jump into introducing our panelists, I think coming out of the pandemic, including being back live like this, what we've seen, the things that evolved from phishing, spiking, business email compromise, supply chain attacks, ransomware attacks, nation state attacks, and the next thing that's coming in the forefront as we go into 2022. Want to kick it off, and Ajoy, you go first. If you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your role, a point or two to this topic, and then we'll go down the line and we'll have some further conversation.
Perfect. Thank you, Rocco. Can you hear me? I guess
yes.
You can. Perfect. My name is Ajoy Kumar. I work for DDCC. My role is I'm head of cyber risk. I look at the risk assessment, enterprise cyber risk assessments, application penetration testings, governance, policies, metrics, you name it. So quite a bit of work there. And the views today I'll be sharing are my own, don't represent the views of the company, just to get that out of the way. The reason I'm on this panel is like when there was a discussion going on, I was wanted to obviously share my thoughts on how this space is emerging, how the threats are emerging, what do we need to do today to combat the threats that are emerging. We had a good discussion on automation, and I look forward to basically interacting more on these forward-looking topics, because this space is going to change quite a bit in coming years. We'd heard about the role of CISOs and CISOs. That role we heard about from the panel where they were talking about different skill set, soft skills, hard skills, technical skills. I think that's all going to change in the next 5 years with the kind of way our assets are increasing, the complexity, the way it's increasing, the artificial intelligence that is going to start attacking us. It's going to change significantly. So I'm looking forward to a good discussion here.
Perfect. Thank you, Ajoy. Min, over to you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kyriannis. I'm the CEO of Amyna Systems. It's a tech startup, but previously I was actually involved with IT/OT convergence at an engineering firm, the first of its kind in actually building cybersecurity program into OT systems, building systems, as we start evaluating how construction worked. So I've been touting that technology, or not technology, but really the vulnerabilities around building systems, because everybody's looking for convenience in putting systems online. So with Amyna Systems, we actually discovered how we should take a look at it and actually fix these problems, not manage it, because we have too many legacy equipment that's out there. It's been, some of these buildings around here have 30 to 40 years of equipment building automation systems, and everyone is trying to make them smart, and what ends up happening? You open vulnerabilities to attackers that are coming in. So this is where I'm coming in, and I feel like now running a company, the role of the CISO has changed, because coming in as a security professional, we're looking at it from a very different perspective. There's a fine line with what CISOs do nowadays versus what legally many physical security experts do too, in terms of assessments, as well as taking a look at your assets. And I've heard that quite a bit when I sat in here, is that the assets are becoming more complex in terms of logical versus what's on the network and physical.
Right. And thank you. And last but not least, Kevin, thank you for joining us today.
Sure. So my name is Kevin Lee. I'm the CISO for MUFG Securities America, which is the broker-dealer for MUFG, not the retail bank. The reason why I guess I'm here today is because Rocco made me an offer I couldn't refuse. But then for the most part, I would say my path to being a CISO was not the most traditional path. So and part of that is kind of starting out as a DBA, and then kind of moving along, over 20 plus years through IT audit, IT risk, and being the head of IT audit, being at a number of buy-side firms and whatnot. So I think, what I wanted to do was kind of share some of my experiences, kind of, give my perspective from both sides of the coin, because like Min said, the role of the CISO is not your traditional role of the CISO. So, ideally, I've seen kind of more as a third line, second line, first line. So sharing that I think it's meaningful for all of us here. So thanks.
Great, thanks to all. And I think one of the pieces I like to throw out to the group, the thing I like about today, as much as we've got, how would you say, a closer audience, let's keep it interactive. I know there's a lot of conversations that were going on through all the sessions. The one piece I'd like to throw out there is this isn't stopping. I mentioned earlier how we've seen my role as over the last 20 years, not so much even my role. Over the last 20 years, we've called it IT security. We've called it cybersecurity from 10 years ago to cyber resilience 3 to 5 years ago. Now, even cybersecurity seems like an old buzzword, and we're getting into business resilience. But what's driving that is technology evolving, companies embracing technologies, the sophistication in attack, and last but not least, trying to play catch up is the data privacy and regulatory landscape. And I always like to say, if you're relying on security by being compliant, it's bare baseline, it's the bare minimum, and you got to go above and beyond on that front. But I think to that end, as much as we've seen those three areas continuing to evolve, Ajoy, I know when we were having our conversations over the last couple of weeks, one that I wanted to throw out there, there's so much that's happening, whether it's the technology side, the sophistication, how we do business, the escalation, whether it's executive teams, boards, even bring Kevin's background into the mix, coming out of kudos, out of the IT audit side into this side. And I don't want to pass judgment, audit or security. We're all on the same team combating this. But how do you stay at the forefront of this with all these moving parts, with all the evolution that's going on?
Yeah, no, that was a good question, and we touched on that. So for me, I think it comes down to two things. Passion, I think that was the word that was used early on today. I think, Hunter, you used that word, passion. And the second is intellectual curiosity, right? So the CISO's role or CISO's role is to know what basically all these drivers mean to you. And then how do you reflect that with your intellectual curiosity? And then when you're reflecting it with your intellectual curiosity, how much is your passion to get that particular thing like nailed down? Like the threats there will be like different threats every day. How do you systemically deal with that, right? That's something that you have to come up with. And that basically come up with is not necessarily a IT answer or security answer only. It has to be a business answer, right? I could have the words best threat program, whatever it means, right? But if business is not involved in the discussion, what's the value? They may basically, then it becomes like your problem to solve it all the time. I think the role of the CISO is to educate business on ongoing basis and make sure that they are involved in this journey where they are basically understanding the threats that you're talking about, they're opining on it, their perspective in prioritizing those threats is important. How do you do it would vary from organization to organization, depending on the size of organization and all. But I think if you just look through those lenses that I described, CISO's role is changed significantly, where they need to sit on the table. We have complained in past that we don't have a seat on the table. Now we do have a seat on the table, and what we make of it, it is really up to us. And it would differ company to company, but those attributes, those qualities would bring it front and center.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ajoy. And one of the many things I like about being part of the HMG platform, not only being able to, we get to provide our thoughts and insight and things of that nature, get to meet people like this, and before this session or in the planning, I didn't know Min, and I got to meet Min today, Alex, even this morning from EY and Citi, but to that end, and getting to meet Min and understand their company. I said earlier, there really isn't a silver bullet or that control that's out there, but as we were talking about the OT environment, supply chain, had some really great points on this. When you get into that space of operational technology, and especially IoT devices or companies that are trying to manage, how many times we heard today, well, the supply chain, you can't manage it, you can't go test every third party's code and things of that nature. Well, guess what? We're not going to wave the white flag and we're not going to come to a halt. How do companies manage the risks, or what should they be doing with all the insight you have?
Would you really want me to start with that? That's going to take 3 hours, maybe more. Hunter,
We
would
have,
you-
I think Hunter said we do have 2 hours, right?
2 hours.
No.
So, 2 months. 2 months, okay. Maybe I can fit that in. But that being said, I think, let's think about IoT for a second. These devices were built with a purpose, not security in mind, but convenience in mind for whoever wants to use it. We have the Ring system. We have intercoms. We have physical security systems. We have, think about all the IT devices that's out there. I think Gartner has stated that these devices will probably go up to 75 billion IoT devices that's going to be on our network. So my question to all the CISOs in this room is, how much has your role changed since the introduction of IoT devices to your network? And that's what you got to think about, is your role has now changed, right? So you have to start thinking about what kind of devices are now sitting on your network. What's the new protocols that are sitting there? With these legacy systems that we talked about early on, building automation systems, et cetera, you have SCADA systems, Modbus, stuff that people don't typically think about that are now coming onto your networks now that are really detrimental, very vulnerable to attacks, because these devices were not built with security in mind. So now you have to add an additional layer of security on top of that to run that, and be cognizant that hopefully it may not crash your entire network or crash your building automation system. And that has occurred. So it's not just looking internally within your infrastructure and actually developing a network architecture that's secure, but it's also asking the right questions to your partners, the vendors, and say, all right, gentlemen, ladies, please explain to me how you're doing your R&D. How are you patching these devices that are now vulnerable? If you can't patch them, what do you recommend for us to actually ensure that these devices are protected on our network? And many of these companies, I will say this, don't have an answer for you. In fact, they don't even know what they're doing because they're so siloed in a way that it's very difficult to get an answer, and it takes months to get these answers to you. So, and you probably know this, many of the times the responsibility falls back to your lap. You have to develop the network architecture in order to support these devices. And I'm looking around the room, and I'm wondering how many people, with a raise of hand, how many people have done that already? Taking a look at all these IoT devices that are sitting there. No one? I'm shocked. You? I'm shocked that no one is doing that. But these are the things that you have to ask questions about, not just to your vendors, but also internally, the teams that you're managing. Now you're dealing with facilities team that think that these are networks or just standalone networks that are sitting there. Am I wrong to assume that? And trying to educate them and provide knowledge to them and say, hey guys, you're putting stuff, and I'm not going to use curse words, you're putting stuff on my network that I know nothing about. What do you want me to do with this? And what is it going to impact my network if you open a vulnerability? And so there's just so many layers of things that you need to consider, not just internally, but also externally to your partners when you're talking. So as we're doing, as a manufacturing company, as we're doing this and working with ODMs and OEMs, I'm literally asking every partner that I'm working with, explain to me how you're architecting your circuit chips. Where is it being developed? At what tiers? At what levels? Who's doing the programming? How is your programming being vetted? And these are all questions that still needs to be asked even by the owners, because you need to actually do your due diligence as you're taking and accepting these IoT devices onto your network. So I think it's multifold. And I don't want to open the can of worms and say it is everybody's responsibility. We need to actually take social accountability in that respect and say, hey guys, I know what questions I'm asking. I need you to report back to me. So I have a due diligence here that says I ask these proper questions. So when stuff hits the fan, I'm not taking blame for it or taking responsibility for it. We have to take accountability for all of this.
It's eye-popping, and again, as much as you don't want to make it everybody's responsibility, you go back, I don't know, 8 years ago, I was doing presentations on, you mentioned some of the Gartner pieces, and a key statistic, the average person has over, again, keep in mind 8 to 10 years ago, the average person has over 12 IoT or Bluetooth enabled Wi-Fi running around. People say, where? Well, and now it's, I just had something else where I had a new Bluetooth-enabled keyboard, and you're finding it, and it's like, it's insane how many Wi-Fi or IoT devices around your home, or if you're upgrading to smartphones or to smart devices in your home. So we'll come back on that, especially supply chain. But I wanted to get over to Kevin, and Kevin, in the theme of this, the evolving role, especially your background, if you could give us a little bit on that front, what it means and how you've evolved into this role, and not so much challenges, what are things that you need to do as your role now as a CISO continues to evolve into 2022 and beyond?
Sure. So ever since I was a teenager, I was always tinkering with computers, whether it's in junior high school, majoring in computer math, or going to a science and technologies high school, doing computer science. I've always been in the technical field. I thought one day, when I graduated, it was the .com, right? It was like, I'm gonna be rich, right? I'm gonna be a programmer, I'm gonna develop the next best thing, I'm gonna be rich, right? So I've always been tinkering with computers. So then my first job out of school, I worked for a French investment bank, and I was a DBA. And I was there for many years, and then, a lot of being a DBA, and this current role was working with the business, being in technology, supporting the business. The main thing is your GL accurate, is your balance sheet accurate, all that good stuff. I get a call one day from a recruiter, I forget the name, I forget the agency, but they asked me if I wanted to be trying on a different role where you need technical skills and a good communication skills. I said, I'll try it, right? I'll try something maybe a little bit different. Then I went on to another top-tier financial firm. I was hired in that company, and then if I mention the department name, some of you may know which company this is, but it was called the Management Controls Department. So from there, I was hired, and when I met with my first stakeholder, we found a problem with the regulatory reporting. We fixed it. I go back to my manager, and he said, so what did you find? I said, we found a problem, we fixed it. And he goes, what do you mean we fixed it? I said, as technologists, we find a problem, we fix it. He goes, you're an internal auditor. I said, I'm a what? It's called Management Controls Department. He goes, which means internal audit. And I said, get out of here. I'm an auditor now? Long story short, I went through a few firms, worked in the capital market space, security space, auditing applications. Actually, Ajoy and I worked at DTCC together. He was one of my stakeholders, I've known Ajoy for a long time. Throughout the years, I worked in the capital market space, and I headed up the infrastructure and cybersecurity audit team at DTCC. And then from there, went to the buy side, started up and headed up IT audit at a number of buy side firms. Spent a number of years there, and then this opportunity presented itself where it was kind of quasi-risk, quasi-information security. Information risk is now, and this company is part of information security, so I saw that as my way of did I ever picture myself to be a CISO? No. I thought I was going to be rich, in 2000, right? Developing the next best thing, right? So now I'm just being this role, kind of understanding from an internal audit or third line perspective of what really matters to the board, what really matters to the audit committee. Now, kind of taking that knowledge and transitioning to the CISO role, if there's any auditors in this room, I'm 2-3 steps ahead of you guys, right? So I know exactly what you guys care about. I know exactly what you guys are looking for. I can basically kind of structure the way I think my strategy, my roadmap, I can adjust on the fly a lot quicker than them, because they're coming in, they're asking for A, B, and C. I'm already at, S, T, and U, right? So it's like, so for me, a lot of what I think is, what was helpful for me was kind of seeing it from all the various ways, as a technologist, as an internal auditor, as an IT risk professional, and then now as an information security professional. So for me, it's kind of coming full circle to actually say, why should the business give me money to secure their environment? Why do they care? So for me, it's a lot of I think it comes down to being really risk averse, being able to communicate risk to senior management, and also, once in a while scaring them a little bit so that they can give you a little bit more funding. But for the most part, it's a lot of it is collaborating with various different lines. Yeah, that's pretty much it, yeah.
It's an interesting concept there, Kevin. Given your background coming out of audit, and I don't want to go back to my Protiviti days, but trying to do cyber within an audit firm and coming in through that sector. You said staying 2 steps ahead of the auditors. Not even so much 2 steps of the auditors. I've worked with companies across all different industries, but to your point, you've got that mindset that not only knowing what the audit committee is looking for, but it really promotes harmony and collaboration as opposed to, I remember one large bank said, the auditors, it's like whack-a-mole that we just got to keep them at bay. But I think the whole partnership we talked about in the earlier sessions, not only, partnering with the business, but audit falls right into that. And I think, as much as you called it 2 steps ahead, I think, you've got the harmony there that you know what they need and you can speak the language.
If I can.
Please jump in. You as well, man.
I think
keep
I
it
have
flowing.
romance
Just
here.
that's because Kevin, right? We work together. Kevin, you still have an opportunity to get rich. There is something called Bitcoin. Just hack in the network.
Well, that's okay. He's not coming on my network.
No.
Well, quite a bit of free mining can happen on the things that you're trying to break. So Kevin has still a chance to get rich.
We'll work on that later.
Yeah.
Good
rich
stuff.
together.
And again, even on the audience, if you have questions as we continue, take advantage of the wealth of experience that we have here. But Ajoy, I know you've been in security leadership roles at multiple leading financial institutions, and for me, I'm happy that we've known each other over the years. And one organization we've been heavily involved with is the FSISAC, the Financial Services Information Sharing Analysis Center. I know if you're financial services, you know it inside and out, but as a source of threat intel or even working with Homeland Security or law enforcement agencies, there's so many other threat intel organizations that have popped up, many of them commercial. Where does that sit in the CISOs organization, to not so much structurally, but as a benefit or an essential requirement to stay ahead of the curve?
I think threat intelligence function is, you can't live without that function today in my view, because that function is to not only look at like the feeds that you're getting and matching it up with what basically is relevant to you, but also very promptly reacting to, like with their threat hunting internally, right? If you basically see something that matches your asset types, you got to jump on it very quickly. And that's the reason, like I asked that last question from the previous panel, because when you are in that kind of mindset where you're looking at threat hunting and looking based on the reaction you have from the intelligence, then you need to basically be very quickly decipher whether it is going to be impact level A, B, or C. And based on that impact level, you need to be able to figure out where you need to go. And automation is the way to basically react to it. So I think just having threat intelligence function and doing threat huntings, this age and time, you need to basically have that function. I think it is one of the critical functions that CISOs have in their arsenal, and they need to basically fund it, support it fully, break down the silos there, because the tooling in those cases is still a lot of scripting, a lot of basically like seasoned programmers who know what they want to look for and how to look for that, because sometimes you would get lucky and you will get the signatures to do the threat hunt. Sometimes you have to be able to define those signatures based on how the indicators of compromise are written. So I think that is a very important reactive function. Well, I would call it proactive function, because otherwise you go into a reactive function. So that's a proactive function that CISOs absolutely must invest in.
Great. Go ahead, Hunter.
Just mix it up a little bit. We've had a lot of heavy insights and really great insights throughout the day, and not to summarize it all, but what did everyone do over the last 22 months in this crazy bubble that we lived in to stay balanced, healthy, sane, happy, grateful, whatever, engaged? I mean, any great lessons? I have my own story. I'll go last, but anything, did you do anything? I basically went on an intentional mission to do 3 or 4 things, because I said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime learning experiment. Rocco, you go first.
I built the gym in my basement. I had my mountain bike ahead of the curve, and I had my downtime, because ultimately before the whole lockdown or being work from home. I was one of those road warrior types, Monday to Friday on a plane somewhere, car picking me up at 4 and
4 in the morning.
4 in the morning, 6 a.m. flight to wherever, West Coast or something along those lines. But at the same time, whether sometimes I'd bring my running gear for fresh air, pack it up, and it'd come home with me. But at the same time, putting that regimen together, because ultimately, while it was convenient to be connected and be able to respond to people, and sometimes the boundaries of work-life balance got erased, but being able to not have to jump in the car, sometimes when I wasn't on a plane, coming into the city still at 4 a.m., going to the gym before the day started. And I think in that instance, being able to have that outlet, I think even for my wife and daughters who used to be like, you're never here to, we got to get you back out of the house, go do something. We need some downtime, but back to you, Hunter.
That's great.
Finding the time.
That's great, I love it. AJ?
Yes, so for me, I could not get the regimen that Rocco is talking about. I missed that. Unfortunately, that's not my forte. But the way I invested my time was, like, I know security inside out, right? So I used that time to take some college level courses in artificial intelligence and also in data analytics. So I know that data is growing, security data is growing, the telemetry is growing, and we do not have good amount of automation or good amount of intelligence that comes, like there are good amount of vendor tools, right? But how do you really use that data has to be within the security team. Like as a CISO, if I cannot ask those challenging questions from my team, I would not get the answer. So I use time to take 2-3 college level courses. And I do want to use my skills to basically advance security automation and getting more signal from the noise that we deal with.
Great. Min?
Oh, I learned how to drink a lot. No, I'm kidding. No. Actually, like Rocco, I actually started running every single day. So I racked up about 2,000 miles in the past 22 months. But also on top of that, I also was building up a company. And I was actually getting investors and working through all that. Learning a lot about building a business from ground up was very interesting and enlightening. The marketing, all the pieces behind it, the branding, the technologies, people, the soft skills, the hard skills, everything was a learning curve. And I will say that I learned a lot in the past 22 months just building up the company. And in fact, we're actually advancing a lot faster than a lot of people have expected. My angel investors are shocked at how fast I'm moving. I have partners coming on board. I'm working through all of that, the hassles and headaches. We're working through branding. We're learning through marketing. And in fact, we're hiring. I have people that I've started hiring and really diligently hiring, looking for very talented people. So I learned a lot, but I also did pick up drinking, by the way, because I have 2 young kids, 8 and 6, that unfortunately, I was explaining to the gentleman here, as I was doing a webinar on human trafficking, my youngest decided to streak while the thing was recording. And I think Mark and Hunter, you may have been on that call, and I actually turned my head and said, and yell at my kids while I muted and say, please put some clothes on. I'm doing a human trafficking webinar here. That's not what I need right now. So.
That's great.
So.
Kevin?
So the last 2 years, I've never worked as long and as hard in my entire career. I'm sure many of you, I think I started my day earlier, I ended my day later, just because people realize that you're not commuting anywhere besides the kitchen, right? So the way I kind of had my peace and tranquility was when I would, at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., I would walk out of my office, close the door, and not go in there. Because I know once I go in there, it's in work mode. So for the most part, it's kind of compartmentalizing work between, because you're in the same space. I mean, for those that work from home for a while, you guys are probably used to it. But for me, I was always in the office. So for me, it's compartmentalizing. Office means work. I'm staying out of there. I'm not going in there. It's then kind of carrying on the rest of the hours away from that room. I mean, similar to Rocco and Min, I mean, I probably go to the gym 5-6 times a week. Just to kind of stay sharp, stay mobile, avoid the COVID-20, right? Because I'm sure a lot of people were doing a lot of drinking and eating. So for me, I've always been very active. I've been a swimmer. I coach my son's basketball team. I also, as Arwin knows, I race cars on weekends.
Nice.
So so I need to stay in decent shape for me to not carry on too much weight when I'm racing, right? So a lot of it for me is balancing mitigating risk during the day and taking on crazy risks on the weekends. Right? Don't tell my life insurance company, but yeah. So for me, it's just kind of staying mentally sharp, staying physically in shape, and just kind of trying to get through this together. So.
And Hunter, I'd throw out to you, I'd be remiss, and this isn't because we're here at an HMG event. I'm in so many different circles, but I'd like to thank you and the HMG platform for me. Not just, this isn't about me personally, everyone in this room and the panelists here. The last 20 months, kudos. How many events? I've lost track of how many I've done.
I just added them up, 197.
Wow.
I mean, that is insane. And
No, but you can't make this up. So I'll just kind of 2 minutes. Time me, Israel. I said we had to pivot digital. We did it within 10 days. The Summit of America in New York City went digital, which we did yesterday in person. And I got to be honest to tell you, I was terrified that in-person event company, you're out of business unless you get this right. Let's get this pivot right. And we did. We did it. And then some. Our brand grew. People are now asking us to go to Alaska. There's a CIO group in Alaska. They want us to come to Alaska. We're in London probably 10 times in the last 22 months. They asked us to come to Vancouver. They want us there. They asked us recently, Rob, to go to Dubai. They want us, the CIOs in Dubai want us there because they want to be connected to the global platform. And I doubled down and I said, what's my real, like the Covey thing, what's your why? And for me, it was very consistent, was to make the world a better place. Much bigger than, like Israel said earlier, than a simple event model or whatever. And then the why got tested in the past month because a publicly traded company wanted to buy me. I said no, twice. Finally, I said no on Friday, last Friday. It was an incredibly weird moment, but cathartic moment for us and for me and the team. We did it as a joint team effort. But, working through a pandemic with uneven cash flow is crazy as an entrepreneur. It's not a big company, but we got a big payroll. So there's a lot of people to feed. So it was bizarre, surreal, unbelievable. I launched my venture capital firm, did 8 investments. 2 of the 8, the chairman of Microsoft is 5 years in behind me. One of the 8, I'm getting my first 60X next month. A lot of cool stuff. And then the research agenda just took off because the rest of the world kind of caught up to where we were 3, 5, 10 years ago around innovation, disruption. I actually think the CISO and the CIO's next leg up is invention. You got to be the inventor in the enterprise because that's what the CEO needs. That's what the line of business needs. That's what everyone needs. They need brilliant, creative, visionary inventors. And I don't think Gartner will ever get there, ever, at all. So that's kind of where I'm taking the whole network and my vision. But I'm going to tell you, Kevin, I'm with you. I've never worked hard in my life. And I can't tell you how many mornings I'd wake up. Peggy, I didn't mention, Peggy's Gartner Executive 7. Melissa Mars, Gartner 32. And that's number 7 out of like 15,000 or 20,000 now, right, Peg? And Gartner was a client 2 times with me over the past 20 years. They used me to help them. But the point is, or was, to your point, thanks, Rocco.
Thank you.
Staying connected and staying healthy. We also invested in my VC, we invested in a mental health company that brings mental health to the enterprise. Because this whole thing, we don't know the lasting legacy impacts of the economic and mental and social costs regarding this crazy thing that we've been through, right? So it's been incredibly learning, eye-opening for all of us. I hope to God, I'm not going to be around 100 years, I know that. When the next one comes, I hope to God. Thank God we have the most innovative, creative, most advanced technical technology and pharmaceutical, medical in the world, right? The United States. God bless America, right? Yeah. And I got great people in my life.
Yeah, and Hunter, I know we've got a couple minutes left. I said we'd open it up. I
Yeah.
know we jumped a lot of different places.
Let's do it. Just close it
wanna
out.
share?
Anyone else?
John,
John Iannanelli. John's been a dear friend for a decade. John, what are your thoughts on this whole experiment? Is it an experiment or is it a catastrophe that we all went through over the past 22 months? John, by the way, was on Fox News 4 times in the last 12 hours.
It seems like more, but It's a little of both, but you know, I'm always the glasses half full kind of guy. So it's when you look at all the great things that have come out during this past year and how we've transitioned and done things, I mean, I think there's great potential and it's going to continue to change. We're never going to have the same normal that we used to have.
Yep, agreed.
Hunter, I'd just like to throw again, even for today's event, I know a couple weeks ago when the Omicron, thank you to the HMG network, because there was that go, no-go decision. I think you had to just move forward, rip the Band-Aid off, and
Well, you
we're
know,
here. We're here.
I was watching, I do real time, about probably 3 to 4 hours of news a day on a global level, but I was watching the chairman of Goldman Sachs yesterday morning, and he very succinctly said, you know, we're social creatures, as the way God defined us, and you don't realize that lasting effect or impact of that void of of living on Zoom, right? So thank you, Rocco. And we didn't know 2 weeks ago. I said, you know what? We're just going to do it.
Rip
We're
the
going to
Band-Aid
go and make the best of it and see what happens. And I think I felt the content was the best CISO event we've done in 10 years, by far, by a mile. And that's what happens when you get to your passion, your mission, or your why. And that's why Stephen Covey's in my life.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? It's, I'm sorry we don't have drinks tonight. I think we drank all the booze last night. But great session. Thank you, guys. Let's get a
My
picture.
pleasure. Thanks, Rob.
Good job.
For more information, please visit hmgstrategy.com and keep up to date by following us on our social media platforms. Thank you.